Thank you all for joining us here today at the Youth Agenda session of the Youth Economic Forum 2021 entitled A Journey for Progress, Hopes and Dreams for a Better Future. I'm Sharifah Hani Yasmin, Perdana Fellow Alumna, and I'll serve as the moderator for this evening. So, exponential progress in technology and education in the past century has empowered youth around the world to champion for solutions to reform what is increasingly seen as a dysfunctional society. Over the years, uprisings have been on the rise regardless of countries on many fronts, transcending human rights violations, political unrest, racial and gender inequality, and climate change. In many of them, youth play a fundamental role in driving forward progress. Notable mentions of movements fueled by young activists across the world are the Occupy movement, the Hong Kong protest, Fridays for Future movement, and many more. So as we can see from the Slido poll on the website, many of today's attendees are passionate about several causes, including climate change, global citizenship education, and opportunities for all. Please do continue sharing your thoughts and questions with us on the YEF website, because we'll be addressing these questions at the end of the session. And today we have an incredible lineup of speakers who have each driven immense change in their communities, in their home countries, in several fields. And I'm sure that all of you will enjoy and appreciate this knowledge sharing session. Okay, so today we're going to welcome our first speaker, Ms. Aridima Pandey, a renowned climate activist from India who is also a TEDx speaker and recognized in BBC's 100 Most Empowering and Influencing Women's list of 2020. Just 13 years of age, she has been campaigning for climate change and as young as 9 years old, when she actually filed a suit against the Indian government on their lack of commitment to climate change mitigation as agreed upon in the Paris Agreement. Now, I don't know many of us who have done that at such a young age. Okay, so closer to home, we have Kira Yusri from Undi 18 from Malaysia, an electoral activist. And Undi 18, as you know, is a non-partisan NGO responsible for the seismic shift of lowering of the voting age in Malaysia. An activist who campaigns for youth empowerment and representation, she believes that voting or participating in elections is the easiest way to exercise your rights as a citizen, as well as a means to address poverty and lack of dignity by holding elected officials accountable. Lastly, but not least, we have Hadika Bashir, a women's activist from Pakistan calling for an end to early and forced child marriages. She is the founder of Girls United for Human Rights and is working for the protection and promotion of girls' rights in Pakistan. Also, a young leader for sustainable global development goals, as recognized by the United Nations General Envoy on Youth, Hadika worked to sensitize her community to the negative effects of child marriages on children's mental and physical health by lobbying legislators and religious leaders against child marriages. So we should have had a fourth panelist, but unfortunately Ji Chen Liu is unable to join us today. But no worries. Thank you very much to Ridima, Hadika, and Kira for joining us today. Okay, so to kick off the session, I'm going to pose a series of questions to our esteemed panelists, and then at the end, I'm going to take on some of your questions through the Slido poll. Okay, so the first question will be, from Nobel Prize laureate Malala Yousafzai to Time Magazine's Person of the Year, Greta Thunberg, youth have proven time and time again that they can create immense impact in their communities and change the world. So from your perspectives, how do we equip youth with the tools needed to become not only the agents of tomorrow, as so many people have said, but actually leaders of today? So I'm going to pose this question first and foremost to Ridima, and then I'll pass it on to Kira and Hadika. So Ridima?
Hi. So what I feel is that as we have seen that youth have been at the forefront and have been fighting for their rights and for the climate, for the environment, and for the betterment of the future. And I somewhere guess, that due to all the movements that we are having as Fridays for Future and all the other movements that we are having and, the campaigns that we are having, somewhere they create a lot of sense on what has been happening, and it also give us sort of an outline of that this has been real and this has been affecting many people throughout the country, and it's really very bad. And you can't really, deal with it alone. It has to be an sort of, and combined action from everyone's side. And this can only happen when everyone is educated and when everyone knows the importance of taking action. So I feel that, through all the actions that has been taken today, and through all the activities or campaigns or movements that are going on today, they have really equipped the youth, to understand the importance of environment, to understand the importance of climate action. And it has sort of given them an alarm to their senses, that this is the time for you to take action. And if not today, then nothing can really happen. So it has to be today, and there has to be a concrete action that has to be taken.
So on that note, so you've shared that there needs to be more awareness and education for the youth in order for them to proceed in campaigning for these issues. I think I might ask upon Kira Yusri, who is actually the head of education at Undi 18, to share some of her thoughts on educating the youth in lobbying and advocating for change in their countries.
Yeah, thanks, Yasmin. I think when it comes to using education, looking at education as a mechanism for voter education, one thing that I think, especially looking at the Malaysian context, I think historically we've seen how our education system does not necessarily promote critical thinking, nor the spirit to question difficult issues or controversial issues in classroom, right? Especially even if you compare it to tertiary education. Over here in Malaysia, we have a law called the AUKU, or the University and Universities Act law, which actually actively prevents young Malaysians from participating in politics and to a certain extent advocacy in general, or as long as whatever topic that the government deems that might be controversial or risky, they would clamp down on student activists. So I think there are two ways to look at it, right? So firstly is that we need to look at it from a systemic level. What are some institutionalized barriers that exist in preventing young people from speaking up? And if you look at within the education system, AUKU law is one of them. And if you look at at a lower level, in high schools and primary schools, I think our education system needs to encourage more critical thinking, as well as introducing democratic values within the classrooms. For example, something as simple as a head girl or head student, can you do it democratically, right? When your school chooses, do you want to go to the zoo or to a museum? Can you vote for it? These are the little values that we can teach at a lower level. And then secondly, beyond institutional reform, is that could we look at human behavior? How do we actively cultivate change within our own communities? For a topic as simple as lowering the voting age, which to some may be a given, but to others it's an extremely complex idea and not something that that we can adopt quickly, because our culture does not treat young people as important stakeholders in our democracy and our policy making. So could we as young people even begin to have these difficult conversations about values that may not that other people may not agree with, so could we talk to our parents about it? Could we talk to our partners? Could we talk to our friends about it? So these two things I think need to go hand in hand. And when it comes to lobbying for change, I think activists especially, we got to remember that it's not just about going against the system or pushing against the system, but how do we set cultural change from smaller communities as well? Yeah.
Thank you, Kira, for that. And as you mentioned, obviously in Malaysia, there are already laws that suppress this voice of the youth, and this actually makes it difficult to start those conversations. And I think Ridhima might resonate with this because she's also an ardent activist, and she speaks for change on social media. But unfortunately, those privileges aren't present for many of her other youth advocates. I think in the case of the farmers market uprising, so Ridhima, would you like to share some of your experiences in speaking out against that issue and the difficulties of voicing out on such a tenuous issue and having your voice suppressed?
So it's like whenever it comes to raising your voice, or speaking for yourself, or for the youth and for the environment, what really happens is, like, firstly, no one really want to listen to you, because they don't feel like talking about environment, talking about climate change, or about your rights is an important thing for them, and they feel like they can't really do anything for that. And this is all government's job, and if they'll raise their voice, there could be certain actions taken against them. So it's really difficult to raise your voice in India, and to have people listen to you. And at the same time, when it comes to social media, when we try create awareness about something, what really happens is like, uh, even there could be people, that no one would support your campaign, because it could be against a policy or against a decision made by the government. Or what could happen is that no one, people will start criticizing you, that this is what you have been doing, you're against your country, you're against your nation, and you are a terrorist, or things like that, and people start hating on you because you're not supporting their favorite party. So there has been different aspects as for what happens in India. And if you start talking about something which is really very controversial, which is which includes politics and everything, so then you become a person who wants to get highlighted, who wants to get media attention, or who doesn't really is a person who is working on their ethics and stuff like that. So there are different aspects when it comes to raising your voice, and especially being youth is a difficult thing in its own, because everyone would be like, you're just 13, or you're just in school, you don't have you haven't seen the world, how it works, and you don't know, you have been brainwashed, you have been greenwashed, and stuff like that. So it's really difficult to raise your voice, and to have people listen to you and to react on that. And especially when it comes to working against the government, or working for telling them, or making them ring like this is what you have been doing wrong. What really happens is like they never really respond to you, whether it's your petition, it's your letter, it's your campaign, anything which is which is addressed to them, they will never sort of reply to you, and would act as like it's not an important thing for them, or you are not an important person, or the topic in which you're working on or you are addressing to them isn't important for them. And this has just been going on in India since a very long time, since I've been working, say, at, and I would say it's one of the biggest problem in India. I don't know about other countries, but I guess it's a very big problem in India.
I completely agree. I think there are, many sensitive topics in Malaysia as well that the government does not take the youth's voice seriously until it reaches to a point where finally they cannot ignore it, and then they actually try to suppress it further. So I'd like to call upon Hadika to also join this conversation, and perhaps share some of your experiences in advocating for, the delegalization of child marriages in Pakistan. Have you also had similar pushbacks when it comes to your advocacy? Hi, Hadika. Can you hear us? Okay, I think Hadika will be joining us shortly. But before that, I'd like to also call upon Kira. Sorry, let me just check. Hadika, can you turn on your mic? Hello, yes, I can hear you now.
Yes, actually I have internet problem, as I told you, so that's why. Can you repeat your question again?
Sure, of course. I was just asking if you also had the same kind of pushback when you were trying to advocate against child marriage in Pakistan, and how has that experience been for you?
For me, it's for me it's both societal norms and religious restriction, as I live in a patriarchal culture and a tribal religious conservative society. So being a girl, it is expected here that I have to keep the honor of my family and community and tribe. So from my experience in such restriction, one has to rebel and have gets to face criticism. One must be reluctant and not give up, and not give up. Be committed to what you think is right, and be ready to for sacrifices to continue one's journey, and is must, and not to look at the barriers that are in front of him or her. So working in the SWAT is very difficult for us to, as you shared in my introduction. So as I work with the religious leaders, so and we are living in the conservative society. So even when we do sessions with them, they don't want to talk with us. Even they don't, as we have the here we do the veil, the parda, as you know. So they don't want to talk with us. And here, as one of my fellow also shared that from the government also, we don't whatever letters, or we want to meet with the MNS MPAs, so they don't even want to listen to us. And we shared that girls have facing many things. So they said that we have many other issues, like we have the construction problems, we have to make the roads. We don't want the MNA's MP's response is that we don't want to talk about these things, about the women issues. So it is very hard for us to work here in Pakistan and in Swat also. And for us, like a grassroots organization, they have also made a restriction to work in to work here in Swat. They are making obstacles for us. Day by day, they are making like that you have to register, you have to, they make problems in the registration of NGOs. And sometimes they say that they say us a terrorist, that they are terrorists and they are working against Pakistan, and they're working for the foreign funds, and a lot of things are happening. But the government sometimes straightly, they have recently said that the NGOs and the groups are working because they want the foreign funds, and a lot of things are happening here. And whenever the activists start working, like especially the Swat activists, when they talk about women rights or girls' rights, so they try to threat them. So it's very hard for us to work here in Swat, but still we are working and trying to not to give up. Yes.
Thank you very much for sharing that. And I completely agree that, it's important to keep on voicing out on these issues, because even if the government tries to silence one voice, if we have enough voices speaking out on the same issue, it's collective action that can actually push forward this agenda. Because obviously the issue of child marriages, doesn't only affect a child's life, but it also affects others' lives as well, because it's also a cycle, right? It's also when they are actually put into a child marriage and they can't get education, this will also impact their children and the community as a whole. So I'm going to tie this into our next question. So our next question is on equality and inequalities in our upbringings. So as you know, in Malaysia as well, there's a lot of different inequalities in our upbringings, and people experience different sets of discriminations. And for some, it could be the societal norms, or for others, it could be religious restrictions. So I'm wondering, what's the challenges evident in your journey of advocacy, and how do you actually rise and overcome those personal challenges in your journey of lobbying for change? So I'll pose this question first to Kira, and then we can ask the other panelists for their thoughts as well.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because I think every activist have different journeys when they go through their advocacy, right? So my experiences would be wildly different from Hadika and Ridhima because of the context that I'm in. But I would say in my journey so far, I think there's a very clear difference in how I'm perceived compared to my co-founder is perceived, who is a male. And I think especially in Malaysia, when our personal culture is overlapping a lot with our professional way, I think sometimes me being a young woman is perceived negatively in the scene when it comes to speaking up, and especially in political advocacy. In Malaysia, we have very little female political leaders. Our representation in parliament is a measly, I think, 14%, if I'm not mistaken, and it's even worse for our Malaysian cabinet. So because of that, you tend to see, so the many of our stakeholders that we engage are politicians, and they tend to be Malay male, which is the largest demographic here in Malaysia. And you can see this attitude translated online as well. In my experience, I've received online abuse ranging from sexual harassment. I've had death threats. I've been doxxed multiple times, especially by Malay tabloids as well. And these are just, when I speak out about this, many women would tell me the same thing, and they'd be like, oh, this is, it's normal. We go through it all the time. But when I talk about this to my partner, and he's just astounded because this is not something that he had to ever go through at all. So I think, sometimes, if you're not aware and if you're not careful, these things can get personal to you and you can get affected by it. So I'm very privileged to have a very good support system that doesn't, that helps me when it happens. But I don't think this is something that we should excuse, nor should we continue to enable. I think especially in Malaysians, in the Malaysian political advocacy environment. And I think it creates a very toxic environment for other young activists and other young advocates that want to, venture into the scene, because they're very passionate and they're also subject matter experts about, about their causes, like, issues like gender equality, environment, politics. But because of these pushbacks and attitudes that, that don't make it a welcoming space, I think then many young activists will be pushed out of the scene. And that's a very terrible problem, considering if the Undi 18 bill is passed, I think not majority, but almost 40%, almost half of the electoral bloc will be young people. Space is not accommodating to young people. We're gonna have, politicians are gonna have really, they're gonna be really struggling to reach out to young people, to even hear them out, to even consider their outlook when it comes to youth engagement.
Thank you for sharing your journey with us. And Ridhima, I'm wondering if you also faced the same sort of challenges that Kira did. Did people, look upon you less just because of your age? And did you manage to kind of dispel those misconceptions about yourself?
So it's like definitely I've faced. It's like I didn't had as being the one, being supported by my, as being the one, being the one having my parents at my back all the time. I was not the one, who was facing problems because of being a girl, or or a person, from not a great background. But what I really, was feeling having difficulty with was being a youth, being a child, because no one wants to listen to a child, as I said earlier, in India, and it's just like no one will give you importance, even if you're working so hard and, on what you're working, the topic in which you're working is really very precious and is really very important. And most of the people will know that, but no one will support you. No one would listen to you. So this was a huge challenge in the beginning, because people was not, they were not taking me seriously. They didn't want to listen to me. And they were like, I'm just a kid. I've not done much. So gradually, as I did some of my work, and as I, started educating people, people started listening to me. They started giving importance to my words. But at the same time, this was the only thing which I faced personally. But in India, what really happens is, like, if you are a person who is, not from a great background, who is from the slum area, or from the poor country, or from the poor community, what really happens is, like, no one would listen to you. They would be like, you're poor and you don't know much. And many of the poor kids, those who really want to work, they won't be able to, because they don't have the proper resources. So there are different many problems in India. But personally, what I faced was being youth and being the one, raising my voice, especially on a topic which was really different, because climate change and environment was not a topic which was really talking about in India earlier. And even today, not many people talk about these things. So this is a complete new topic that has came in front, and that can somewhere be the reason, why people doesn't, take action and doesn't listen to us. But I feel the biggest problem is being youth and, working for yourself and working for your for your future.
And while we're actually on the topic, I have a question here from a member of the audience. And what's your thoughts on the best way for youth to challenge and tackle climate challenges, given that a lot of the changes have to happen by the government or by the factories or by the companies. So how do you manage to lobby against those changes?
Is this a question for Ridhima?
Oh yes, sorry Ridhima, I'll just share the question again. So I'm just wondering, Ridhima, what's your thoughts on how is it best for youth to tackle climate challenges, considering the fact that a lot of the work has to be done by the government or the factories?
I think I can't really hear you properly. Your voice is really breaking to me. I don't know.
No worries. I'll just repeat that slowly. I'm wondering what, in your opinion, is the best way for youth to tackle climate change? Because most of the time it's the government's role to actually, hold companies accountable for their emissions and things like that. Did you hear the question?
Yeah. Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Sorry. Yeah. Now I can hear you.
No problem. I'll just repeat it for a final time. I'm just wondering, what's your thoughts? What's the role of youth in lobbying for change? Because a lot of times with climate change action, right, you need the government to take a step and hold companies accountable. So considering that's something that the government has to do, how can the youth actually push forward and lobby for the government to do that?
It's like, first of all, it's really important for the youth, to be the one, involved in the decision making, or to be involved in whenever there's any policies been made or something, or, at least if they don't really want to, involve us in those process. It's really important, to at least consider what are our thoughts on those issues, or what are our thoughts on those policies, or on the stuff that's been going on, because for the governments and for the companies, the most important thing is their profit, and how can the whole agenda come to increasing their GDPs and stuff like that. And they never really thought of how it's going to affect the people living out there, or how it's going to affect the environment itself. So it's really important to have young people's opinions and thoughts, because somewhere the decisions and the actions that are going to be taken today, they are going to somewhere mold our future into whether it's going to be good or whether it's going to be bad. And what's happening right now is it's just it's been molded up to that it's going to be very, very bad. And what can be the easiest thing is because not many countries have these things that where they would be having a council, a youth advisory council, where the youth would be giving their opinions on the laws or on the norms which has been made. And if they doesn't really agree with that, they won't be made a law. I don't feel like there even if our government has thought of it. So it's really important to first of all make everyone understand that this is why it is important for us to be involved in decision making. And at the same time, until unless we would put our concerns in the forefront, no one is gonna be like, okay, this could be a problem of the youth, let me work in that. So we have to be the one speaking for that. And I'm not sure whether how can we be more involved with those things, because this hasn't been a thing which I think could happen in my country for now. So I've never been a person who have thought about it, but I feel like if there would be a pressure on the government that it's really important for the youth to be involved, and or if you don't really involve the youth, then there would be no votes for you the next time. Then I guess this could be a thing which they would implement on, and on which they would work on. It's just my opinion. I don't know about if this gonna be working or not, but yeah, I feel that it can bring a change.
Thank you very much for that. And I agree as well. As Kira has mentioned earlier, that speaking out is important, but at the same time, to have political power and be able to vote governments that actually do work, as opposed to governments who don't care about issues that affect us all, is very important. And that's why you should always also educate the youths on their rights when it comes to civic participation and voting. So I'd like to ask Hadika her thoughts on this issue. Hadika, have you had a lot of pushback in your personal journey of advocacy, and how did you manage to overcome that challenge when it comes to lobbying for the government to talk about the issue of child marriages in Pakistan, because it's such a specific issue and it's such a sensitive issue over there?
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure. I'm just wondering, what's your personal journey of advocacy, and why did you feel so passionate about this issue, and some of the challenges that you faced, and how did you manage to overcome those challenges when it comes to lobbying?
As when I'm working with on early and forced marriages because when I was 7 years old, so one of my friends told me that she's getting married, and all of us were very excited about about her marriage. So the same thing that happened with me, that because as you were talking about the upbringing and inequality also, so it was in my mind to share all these things. So in our society, when they give more importance to a boy as compared to a girl. So when I was 11, so my family told me that now she is adult, and now she should get married, because now she can she can give a birth to a child. So that's why they were like that. It is a tradition in our society. So and then then I convinced my family. Actually, my father supported me on that journey. So my father, I was crying, and I was saying to my father that I want to study and I want to continue my study, and I don't want to get married in this age. I was just 11-year-old on that time. So my father, my father was the only person who supported me. My father was that that she's more than a boy to me. So then my father convinced my family. So when I started working in the my society, so they were like, as I told you, that being a girl, it is expected from me that I have to keep the honor of my family and community and tribe. So they have, the community have said so many times, my family, they have they said that why she's working against early and forced marriages, and she should stop working. And when when I started working against early and forced marriage, I was just 13 years old. So they were like that, why she's just a child, and we would not hear to her. She don't know about our society, and she don't know about our culture. So even the women were against me, that she's doing she's doing a wrong thing. She's against our tribe. So there were a lot of things that were happening. But with the passage of time, then they started hearing me that yes, she's doing she whatever she's saying right, that early and forced marriages affect the girl health and education. So these were the challenges that I was facing on that time. And as I also shared with you that I have met with so many MNAs, MPs, and they their response is also about like that we have met with them, and we were like that as the in the Pakistan bill, in early and forced marriage, the age of a girl child is just 16-year-old, and a boy age is 18. So we were trying to to increase the age of of a girl child to 18, and the imprisonment to make it also to make it increase. So their response was that, as you know that we are living in a Pakistan, so they said that according to, they touch religion to this, that in religion, the Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she get married in the age of 9. So it's totally right to get girls married in the age of 9 and 10. So so we were, but they didn't see that the Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam personality was so, he was a great person, but they didn't notice, and they want to implement those things now. So we get, a bit, not a positive response from their sides. And when we talk about the girls issues, there are a lot of issues that girls are facing. In the daylight they face harassment, and they don't want to talk about these issues. And yeah, before the month, here in Swat, the honor killing ratio was increasing daily. So we also talk about these things to the MNAs, MPs, and they were like that, these are not core issues. We have more important issues, like I have shared with you, that the roads and, constructions and all these are the issues we should talk about it. Not these are the issues that these are not the issues for us to these are not the important issues that we should talk about it. So we are trying to, also we are nowadays we are trying to meet with the senators, and but because of the COVID-19, they don't want to meet with us. So actually they don't. I know they have received our letters, or we are trying to call them, but they don't receive our calls or letters. So we are trying and trying, and we will try to send our voices to them, and we will show them that yes, these are also the issues, and they should raise also voices in the parliament and about these issues. So yes, these are the issues that we are facing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Hadika. And on that note, as you said at the end, I think COVID-19 has certainly made it difficult for activists to actually push forward their agendas and lobby for change. And even though nowadays, with the rise of technology and the advent of the internet, we're able to amplify our voices greater than ever did before. Do you think that COVID-19 has affected advocacy? Because previously you can actually go to the MPs in person and they cannot ignore you, but nowadays all you can do is calling them out online on social media. And what happens actually if the government steps in and actually limits your freedom of speech online? So I'm going to pose this question first to perhaps Kira. What do you think? Has there been issues in your advocacy just because of COVID-19?
Yeah, I think definitely, right? Especially if you look at context of Malaysia, how our politicians are using COVID-19 as a reason to tweak the way they do governance here in Malaysia. For our international audience, that in Malaysia right now we are technically in a state of emergency where Parliament is not allowed to sit. Our state assemblies are not allowed to gather, which is very ironic considering we are in such a crisis, and our parliamentarians are not allowed to gather on the basis of COVID, and yet every single industry business is open right now here in Malaysia. So I think COVID-19 has really pushed activism into a whole new I guess we have to really pivot the way we do our work, right? Because without parliamentary sessions, we can't work with parliamentarians to raise questions in parliament. We can't meet, it's very difficult to meet cabinet ministers to get them to talk about institutional reforms or even public health issues because they're not open to engaging with the public. But more importantly, I think looking at structures in Malaysia that allows for check and balance is that beyond parliamentary sittings, we have something called Parliamentary Select Committee, and technically, according to I think our Prime Minister, parliamentary select committees are allowed to go on because it's not technically a sitting, right? And normally in parliamentary select committees here in Malaysia is when MPs can actually sit down rationally, like the adults that they are, and discuss policies and also compel ministries and agencies to provide data on various issues. But because Parliament cannot sit, and yet and then recently our speaker has came up with, like a memo saying that actually parliamentary select committees will also not go on. This means that in many ways democracy is being suppressed here in Malaysia, because there are just no avenues for the people or even our elected representatives, regardless of which side they're on, to question the executive on decisions that they make. And in the pandemic, the executive is making a lot of decisions without consulting the masses or consulting their fellow parliamentarians, allowing passing stimulus, coming up with policies on how businesses should behave, opening and closing of schools, and when it comes to young people, I think we are affected so drastically by the pandemic, not just because education has now shifted online, but in Malaysia, our unemployment rate is the highest we have in decades. And we have all these issues and all these problems, and even if we have, and it doesn't matter if we have more young people or more women in parliament, if parliament is not allowed to sit. So I think, as OD18, we really try to rethink and think about how do we innovate our advocacy and innovate the work that we do so that we can still continue pushing for issues that matter. Even when politicians tell us that issues like democracy and human rights, that's not really important. You need to focus on the economy. You need to focus on health. And I think it's a lot of the work that we do is now how do we get people to understand that all of this actually goes hand in hand. Issues like climate change, issues of public health go hand in hand. Issues of gender, issues of education, youth employment all go hand in hand. And by removing important institutions in Malaysia, we will not be able to advance this discussion. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Kira. And on that note, I'd like to ask the next question to Ms. Ridhima. So, as you know, as Kira mentioned before, social media is one of the avenues that perhaps activists can turn to when there's COVID-19 restrictions in play. And in light of your activism on social media, do you think that that's actually a good avenue to advance your cause when there's so many people out there who might have shared really negative messages? And as one of our audience members has asked, do you have anything to say about the way that another activist in the same field, Ms. Greta Thunberg, is being treated on social media?
So it's like they are, as being the one, working in person, and as being working, just at sitting at my home and on one screen, or both of these things has different importance, because, if there's a sort of, a project that has came up and, and the company is going to destroy up and is going to cut down, say, 10,000 forests in my place, so in my state, they're going to cut 10,000 forests just to expand the airport, which is not really necessary at that place. And, and it's the core, it's the elephant reserve. There's been many animal species living over there, but they just want to destroy it because of the profit, So at that time, even though we have been working online for that a lot, we have been striking for that online, we have been running up campaigns, we have been filing out online petitions, but what could have made a bigger difference is that we going over there and striking all day, and being there and won't let them chop off the trees, because right now, as it's not safe, and because of the guidelines, they would go there and they would cut the forest, and we won't be able to do anything, because if many people would go there, the most important thing would be that it won't be safe for us, and at the same time they could arrest us for not following up the guidelines, and we won't be able to do anything, because this is what we have been we have done, which is not sort of a thing that we should have done. So as there is a negative side as well, as you can't really do the things that is really necessary to do, that you can do in person on social media. And criticism is a thing, which is on social media, because not many people have the guts to, say anything against you, on your face. But, on social media, they could just sit at their home and and comment on you, and it won't really affect them that much, So that's the thing as well. But at the same time, social media gives us a larger platform, we can reach out to many people, we can have their ideas, and we can connect so many people, from different parts of the world. As I'm from India, and you're from Malaysia, and she's from Pakistan, so we are coming up from different places, but at the same time we are all here and talking about very a critique and very very important issue. So that's the thing, and at the same time, when it comes to bullying, or the way the activists are being treated, on social media, I would say, I don't really have many words for that. And to be honest, uh, if Greta was a new person in this field, and she was being criticized, it could be a thing which would affect her. But now, as being a person who has been, in this field for so long and has been working for so long, I am sure and I can bet that she won't even, would be bothered by these things, and she might, because this is what I do, somewhere sometimes when I read the comments or the messages, I just laugh on, how can, this isn't a thing which makes any sense, but still you are doing it, and if it makes you happy, then just do it, because it doesn't affect me. And until and unless it doesn't affect you, it's just useless for them, to comment, and it's just, they're just wasting their time. And I'm sure that, if you are a person who's been working in a certain field for so long and it's been the one, criticized a lot, since the beginning, you would be the one, who won't be the one, who would be bothered. In the beginning, me personally, I was really bothered. I was so frustrated. I was like, I want to I want to reply them, I want to complain, I want to do a complaint against them and things like that. But gradually, as I started reading them and I started understanding, now I just laugh on that. And most of the time I just ignore them, because if you give them a hype, they would be like, they would be successful in letting you down. But if they can't you do that, they would comment twice, thrice, 4 times, or even 10 times. But after a certain point, if they won't really get any reply, they would stop. And that's what we have to do. And so yeah, it's like, for me, the social media do have pros and cons as well. And yeah, everything, it's not that great, but it's not that bad. And it's very, it really helps us to influence a large amount of people and a large amount of audience.
Thank you very much on that. And I find it, really incredible that a person as young as you already have so much maturity as compared to, some adults on social media who might be saying negative things. But as you said, they're only able to do that from the comfort of their own homes. And they are not the ones actually on the front lines pushing for change, and they don't actually know how difficult that is. So I'm going to I think ask the last question of the session, primarily because one of our speakers, Ms. Hadika, has had to leave. So we'd like to take this chance to thank you, Ms. Hadika, for having joined the session. And before we end for the evening, I think I will ask, Kira and yourself to share the final advice that you'd like to share to our audience in their journeys for fighting for their passions and bringing more attention to their causes. Would you like to start?
Sure.
Yeah,
sorry. Who are you talking to?
Sorry, I think I'll pose the question first to Kira, and then we will have
awesome. All right. So I won't take too much time. Thanks so much for moderating the discussion. I think I always tend to tell people two things when it comes to advocacy and how do you actually be a good advocate. One is to always listen and to put yourself in a position where you are advocating from a place of empathy. And I think this concept can apply to any form of advocacy. Even if something as not as relevant to lowering the voting age, how does that come from a place of empathy? But for me, it's a lot about listening to my students, listening to the kids that are going through issues and they are suffering from the blowback of badly governed policies. Coming from a place of empathy and applying that lens to your advocacy is extremely important, because then you can engage with different communities a lot more authentically as well, right? And also, I think when you come from a place of empathy and you apply that lens, it is a lot easier for us to have more difficult conversations on topics of race or religion, controversial topics, no matter where you are. And then secondly, this is something that I'm trying to do myself still, is to read a lot. I'm I really hate reading nonfiction, but unfortunately, in the job that I do, I really have to study up what I work on. Otherwise, because nowadays, when we want to be involved in roundtable discussions or consultations, we need to also step up and educate ourselves on the issues at hand, right? So we can't just brush aside saying, oh, this is not my expertise, but at the same time, don't put any effort into understanding more about it. So an example is that, I started as a advocate to lower the voting age, but now a lot of the work I do looks into electoral reform and democratic governance here in Malaysia. I did not do a degree in political science, nor did I do a degree in law, but it's something I had to learn on the job. And it's something that, I'm trying to enjoy doing. And, but it's really about, every session I had to attend, every interview I give, I will read up and, try to have a good understanding of the issue before going into that session. So I think just applying these two habits in the day-to-day work, and even if advocacy is a part-time work, right? I think having these two lenses is very important to make sure that your advocacy is sustainable and consistent. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to now pass the mic on to Ms. Ridhima to share her final advice for our audience of young professionals and future change makers listening in, primarily because, climate change is such an important field here in Malaysia, and we really appreciate any solutions or suggestions that you'll be able to make.
So it's like what I would say is not something, that you should be working in this particular issue or this particular topic, or you should be working this long, but what I would say is that that it's really important, to feel the importance of, working on this issue rather than being the one, having this thing that, okay, it's a thing which is going on and, everyone is saying to speak up, or so I'll just go on, support my friends and do this thing. So, it won't really bring up a change because this would be a thing that you aren't really doing from the bottom of your heart. So it's really important to feel the importance and to put your heart and soul into it. And at the same time, if you are being an activist, and if you are trying to work on climate change, and it's really important to be optimistic, and it's really important to be patient and to believe in yourself, because there are going to be people, those who are going to degrade you, and discourage you. So you have to be you have to be the one believing in yourself and be like that this is what I'm working on and I am doing right, and I would success and give a slap on those who on their faces, those who have been criticizing me and saying that I can't really do this thing or this isn't really important, and at the same time the things if as I work mostly on petitions and stuff like this, so it's a long process. I've filed a petition in 2017 and it's still going on till today. So it has been a long process. So it's really important for you to be patient and to be the one waiting for the results to come, and not to be impatient and be like this isn't gonna work and I'll just leave this. And at the same time no one really knows what can happen. So it's really important for us to be optimistic, and at the same time bringing small changes in our own lifestyle can bring up can give a different meaning or a different face to a thing. So it's really important to try new things and to adapt to new things and bring changes in our lifestyle. And I somewhere believe until and unless we step out from our comfort zone, we can't really bring up a change, or we can't really think of that I can be a person, who can drive up a change, because for that, it's really important to come out from our comfort zone and, to try out new things and to be the one, be able to, ready to accept all the challenges, all around the world, because it's not easy to be an activist, especially, in the area of environment, and to be advocating for the climate and for the environment and for the child rights.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Ridhima, and we really appreciate your suggestions and your thoughts on the issue. So I think we'll end this session here today, and I'd like to just affirm the 2 points that Ms. Ridhima and Ms. Kira shared today on the importance of really finding your passion when it comes to advocacy and lobbying for change, And secondly, to actually learn and be educated on the issues that you're trying to strive for, because it's so important to know the realities on the ground and try to advocate for change in a way that's sustainable. So I think this session has really helped us understand the challenges of governance and sustainability. But we hope the experience and ideas shared by our panelists here today are able to support all our listeners on your own solutions and initiatives wherever you might be, in Malaysia or overseas. So thank you again to all our speakers for their thoughts and advice to the new generation of youths across the world. So I'd like to thank you as well, the listeners, for tuning in on this Saturday evening. Thank you very much for joining us here today at the Youth Economic Forum 2021. I'm signing off. My name is Sharifah Hani Yasmin, and have a good evening. Thank you.